Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Pacific Rim Uprising. It's sort of like the sugary 7-year-old soda pop corporate kind of answer to Pacific Rim. Or really, it takes everything that was unique about Pacific Rim and removes it. Pacific Rim was obviously sort of a unique case. You don't really get directors like Guillermo del Toro making kind of like big robots fight giant monsters kind of blockbusters every day. And even though certainly it wasn't really that much different from any of those, it was certainly a very good one, a very good within that kind of genre, like Del Toro when he was doing more of his kind of genre experiments. And I guess between that and Crimson Peak, where it's like Del Toro does a certain thing, and certainly that was interesting, and I enjoyed Pacific Rim quite a bit actually. It's like not the greatest thing in the world or something, but I got the Blu-ray, I've watched it a bunch of times. But I think the weirdness and the oddness and the uniqueness that Del Toro brought to Pacific Rim, even though it might not feel as unique as, a Pan's Labyrinth or something, feels extra unique when you see what it's like when he's not there. Now, he was a producer. He turned this down so he could make that, Lady Has Sex with a Fish movie, which I think sort of worked out for him. This movie definitely plays like kind of just a B movie but with a big budget. It doesn't feel, honestly, like the whole idea of blockbuster was you take a B movie and you direct it at an A level, and this isn't really directed at an A level. But I think it's not just that. It's like, I like B movies, I like cult movies, I like giant monster movies and kaiju movies and giant robot movies and cool things exploding. So honestly, I should probably like Pacific Rim Uprising, but I think the problem with this movie is this movie doesn't really have fun. And that's kind of the thing with it. It's like the action sequences are fun and very well lit and you can see everything. And in some ways, that's another problem, because I think what was cool about Pacific Rim was kind of its dark murkiness. While it did all those things, it sort of did the reverse of what Transformers does. This is certainly better made than a Transformers movie. It was kind of doing these like darker neon things and having fun with the lighting and things like that. This is perfectly well lit, so it can play well in 3D in all sorts of different formats, and you don't have to worry about like not seeing anything, which was a complaint with the original. I can see everything fine in it, but I can understand you want to like maybe see more. It sort of looks like almost like a kind of classic kind of Godzilla movie or something in terms of its lighting. It also looks like the Beastie Boys Intergalactic video, and not in like a good way. It's also weird to see, after particularly a film like Shin Godzilla, to have Hollywood be like, hey, we can make a giant monster movie too and have it appeal to the Asian marketplace and specifically China, and sort of take all the meaning out of it, which I guess is how Americans view these kind of films. Is like kind of, I mean, they are disposable and fun, and certain ones are, but it's kind of interesting to think of like Shin Godzilla happened between the last Pacific Rim and this one, and it seems like you added like virtually no meaning to this film and didn't even really think about it, and it's a very sort of American way to view these films. But one of the things I think it's really missing, and I think any kind of fun, dumb movie needs, is sort of a sense of humor, really, which I don't think this movie really has as much. It has like kind of like dumb blockbuster humor, but I was thinking about this versus big giant kind of monster movie that I liked from almost exactly a year ago, which was Skull Island. Now Skull Island's not perfect, but Skull Island had a sense of fun to it. I had a good time at Skull Island for the most part. And Pacific Rim Uprising sort of just washed over me in the way any vacant blockbuster does. Why do we have this franchise? Why didn't you find a younger director who was interesting to do something fun with this franchise? The idea that like, hey, there are giant robots in it fighting giant monsters, that's a profitable franchise thing, and that's certainly why we all thought the first one would be a bigger hit than it actually was, specifically because of, Transformers making money for whatever reason. And I get that, but you're kind of like not understanding why the audience originally liked it. You're kind of just looking at it at its market value. And I get that like this movie is fun to a certain degree, but it feels like I'm watching the kind of like crappy, comic book adaptation of Pacific Rim, where, you got the like B team writers, and even the writing, like you have all these like various plot complications, things like that. The whole like sort of twist in it is really lame. You kind of figure it out, and when the kaiju do show up. You're like, I mean, I knew they were going to show up because it's in the trailer, and it's also, you know, a Pacific Rim movie. Felt like something like if I had seen a 70s anime of this, it would have known how to do it a lot better, but this had to like oversaturate with all these ideas. It didn't have as much fun of the world the way Guillermo del Toro was in it. Ron Perlman's not in this movie. It just like needed to dive into those things or just be as dumb as it could be, but it seemed to like sort of like get, I'd say like 80% there, but still try to act like we're gonna flesh things out and like have this young group of kids who we sort of want to pretend like we're doing like a Kingsman thing, but honestly we're really just gonna focus more on John Boyega and not be able to kind of do two plot lines at once very well, so that you'll like sort of know these people but not really. And also John Boyega's like Idris Elba's son, which is like vaguely a little racist, that you like couldn't just make him a different character, specifically because he never mentioned this guy in the first one. I was really surprised how much I was not into this movie, and I liked Pacific Rim, and I was, you know, I think we all knew, okay, this is going to be the lesser movie, and you kind of brace yourself for that, but Pacific Rim Uprising never sort of makes up for it, and I'm already going in there with expectations like, okay, I'll give you a break, and it's like, okay, this is not good. It's sort of like, you know, you see this like amazing chef make kind of like a cheeseburger and make an amazing cheeseburger, and it's like, yeah, it's just certainly a cheeseburger, but they did such an amazing job with it and it was so fun and I had a good time. And then they're like, okay, we're gonna make the same cheeseburger, but we're not gonna make the cheese and we're gonna take out a lot of the stuff, but the spirit's still there. In terms of a franchise, I sort of find this to be sort of dead. You know, this feels like the direct to DVD, VHS, direct to whatever the direct to thing is, the cheaper sequel that doesn't get released theatrically kind of thing. And even though John Boyega really sells this film, I don't know why Scott Eastwood keeps being in movies. Like, it's not gonna happen. Guys, just give it up. He's like such a cipher of a person. It's like ridiculous. Anytime I see Scott Eastwood in a movie, I almost want to yell at the screen and be like, stop trying to make Scott Eastwood happen. It's not gonna happen. Like, stop inserting him into things. It's like, ugh. Just do not like that guy. Like, I just like, I sort of get why they think that, but I'm like, why do you keep trying though? Like, just like he's like the poor man's Army Hammer or something. It's like at a certain point you're like, learn how to use him or get rid of him. It's just ridiculous. But I think John Boyega really sells it. You can tell he like, almost his performance feels like he wants this movie to work. He's a producer also. He's like really brings kind of more of a star presence than you've seen from him. Between Finn and Attack the Block, this doesn't come close to those, but it does show like he could do, you know, have a career doing these kind of big blockbuster things and really, you know, sell himself through it. It reminds me how promising of an actor he was, since he can, you know, sort of steal even a Pacific Rim movie from out from under everyone else. But I think everyone else, it just like feels like kind of boring, normal sort of Hollywood casting, which I think is another issue with this. Is it does feel like kind of the Hollywood version of a movie that was Del Toro's version of a Hollywood movie. So you're just sort of just making a big blockbuster Hollywood movie. You're not really, you know, doing anything with it, which makes it less interesting. You know, one of the things I think that is interesting about certain directors is they know how to cast, and they cast interesting people, and this is like, you know, not that interesting. And the original had like Charlie Hunnam in it, who wouldn't come back because I guess he thought King Arthur was gonna do well. I would be happy with the Pacific Rim Uprising like animated movie. I would be happy with a lot of Pacific Rim things. Hell, I would even be open to a Pacific Rim 3, but I don't think this was necessarily the right director for it. I get that this film is mainly made for a Chinese audience, and maybe it's not necessarily for me and certain things like that, but as a film, it's just honestly not that interesting. It's just literally just watching a B kind of movie, like watching a Power Rangers episode. Like, it's probably understood how to be a colorful, fun Power Rangers movie in certain ways better than the actual recent Power Rangers movie, but it just sort of plays in kind of like that bland, like, oh, it was a blockbuster sort of way, and it kind of like still makes you think of like, well, what made Pacific Rim interesting? And really the only thing that did was Del Toro's involvement. It's really not that amazing of a movie or anything. It's just a fun blockbuster with a cool director. Used just kind of like, you know, a guy who's a TV director mainly, and I don't think really could bring that kind of flavor or a different kind of weirder flavor to it. It's just not going to work as well. This Pacific Rim really needed was an interesting director. You know, certainly I will give him credit for the fact that this is better shot. Like, all the action sequences with the robots was better than anything the Transformers did, and visually I could tell what was going on, which is also better than the Transformers, and the fights were better than the Transformers stuff. So I do think he understands how to make an action sequence. He just doesn't understand how to get me to love the movie. He understood how to make disposable fun junk, and maybe that's all you really needed from Pacific Rim Uprising. Like, if you have a 7-year-old boy, they'll like love the shit out of this movie, and love the experience of it, but it's not really something that is going to go more than that. It is just so blandly there, and I think it actually makes Kong Skull Island feel even better because that had a personality to it, and this film doesn't really so much have a personality to it. It feels like any big blockbuster or any big, film with, big giant monsters and giant robots fighting each other. It's even lit like a million other kaiju films are. It doesn't understand what made that film special. It just feels like a sequel kind of doing the corporate thing and them understanding like, hey, financially this is what people had a complaint with, but if we did it the right way, we could make a lot of money. And that's a stench that Pacific Rim Uprising can never completely wash off of itself, because it actually believes that that stench is making it smell better and is making it cooler at the club and at work and stuff, when everybody knows, frankly, that this stinks and is pretty inferior. And even if you're trying to give it a break to a certain regard because of Del Toro not actually directing it, you're almost kind of stuck with a sequel in the way we used to have sequels, where they just get, kind of the second AD or something to direct it because they didn't care as much about it. Because you can tell this like lost its personality in the way that sequels before people cared about sequels usually would, and this one definitely does as well. It's good as like kind of fun disposable junk that you can get drunk in front of and maybe pass out during, and then wake up and rewind the action sequences so you can see those, because those are kind of neat. But other than that, I think Pacific Rim Uprising kind of fails in comparison and sort of reminds you of the flavor that's clearly missing from this kind of just disposable junk kind of sequel. It's clearly missing from this disposable junk kind of sequel that you clearly just like dropped in the water and will watch just sort of float away and float off as you sort of feel bad that you just kind of wasted. Pacific Rim Uprising reminds you of the flavor that you're missing, but it also kind of never really finds a way to make its own flavor, just sort of feeling like another kind of big Hollywood sort of a big Hollywood kind of bland sequel that you're sort of used to, and in a lot of ways and in a lot of ways this film just has too much disappointment to really get past. So if you have seen Pacific Rim Uprising and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.